Many know the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs of faith, but few delve into the lineage of Ishmael, Abraham's eldest son. However, understanding the Ishmaelites is essential to understand many biblical events and even modern conflicts in the Middle East. The Bible not only recognizes Ishmael as a descendant of Abraham, but also records a divine promise made to him, the formation of 12 princes and a great nation. Genesis chapter 17 verse 20, the story of the Ishmaelites through time, influencing wars, alliances, and even spiritual aspects that last to this day. In addition, the Ishmaelites are mentioned in several passages of the Old Testament, sometimes as allies, others as opposers of Israel. Understanding their origins, their culture, and their descendancy sheds light on the biblical and geopolitical scenario of the current world. In this video, we will explore who the Ishmaelites were, how the 12 tribes of Ishmael were formed, and how their lineage continues to echo to this day. Before, do not forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Come on. The origin of Ishmael, son of Abraham with Hagar. The story of Ishmael begins in a moment of human impatience and divine promises. Abraham, then called Abraham, received from God the promise that he would have a son. Genesis chapter 15, verses 4 to 5. However, time passed and Sarah, his wife, remained sterile. In Genesis 16, Sarah proposes that Abraham have a son with his Egyptian servant, Hagar, a common practice in the culture of the time, but out of the perfect will of God. Thus is born Ishmael, the first biological son of Abraham. Hagar gave birth to a son to Abraham, and Abraham called the name of his son that Hagar gave him, Ishmael. Genesis chapter 16 verses 15. God in his mercy did not reject Ishmael. On the contrary, he visited Hagar in the desert when she fled from Sarah and made great promises about his son. I will multiply your offspring in abundance, so that by numerous it will not be counted. Genesis chapter 16 verses 10. Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86 years old. Genesis chapter 16 verses 16. However, later, God fulfilled his original promise, giving Abraham a son with Sarah, Isaac, the son of the promise. As Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised, some Arab tribes usually circumcise their young at that same age. Soon after a year, Isaac was born. The birth of the legitimate son of Sarah and Abraham, Isaac, caused a series of problems of relationship between Sarah and Hagar. In fact, even before Ishmael was born, Sarah and Hagar had already misunderstood each other. Hagar even ran away to the desert, afraid of Sarah. In the desert, the Lord's angel appeared to her and ordered her to return to Abraham's house. The angel told her that the son she carried in her womb should be called Ishmael. For this reason, the name Ishmael means God hears, because the Lord heard Hagar's affliction. Genesis chapter 16 verse 11. But the misunderstanding between Sarah and Hagar reached its peak when Isaac was decimated. At Isaac's decimation party, Ishmael ended up mocking Isaac. Sarah was very offended and demanded that Abraham send Hagar and her son away. Genesis chapter 21 verses 9 and 10. The tension between Sarah and Hagar culminated in the expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael. Genesis chapter 21 verses 9 to 14. But again God took care of them in the desert and reaffirmed his promises. Even outside the line of the messianic promise, Ishmael would be the father of a great nation. Although Ishmael was not the son of the messianic promise, God blessed him in a grandiose way, showing that his plan includes mercy for all the descendants of Abraham. In Genesis 17, God clearly affirms the blessing that Ishmael would give. As for Ishmael, I also heard you, behold, I will bless you, I speak, O fruitful, and I will multiply you greatly. 12 princes will be born, and I will make of him a great nation. Genesis chapter 17 verse 20. This promise echoed the blessing given to Abraham in relation to the multiplication of his descendants. Even if Ishmael was not in the lineage of the spiritual covenant, which would pass through Isaac and Jacob, he would still be the father of a large people with prominence and influence. After being comforted by the Lord, Abraham fired Hagar and his son. They took bread and water with them, but at a certain moment the water ran out, and they thought they would die. However, God helped the two, and once again renewed his promise that he would make him a prosperous man. The Lord intervened again. God, however, heard the boy's voice, so God opened his eyes, and she saw a well of water. Genesis chapter 21, verses 17 and 19. Here we see not only a physical miracle, the water of the desert, but a symbol of divine sustenance for the future of a nation. Ishmael grew up in the desert of Paran, became an arrow man. Genesis chapter 21, verse 20. And he married an Egyptian, thus beginning a strong and resistant lineage. Accustomed to the arid environment and the struggle, although Isaac remained Abraham's only heir. Ishmael and Abraham's other sons, with their concubines, were benefited by him. Genesis chapter 25, verses 6. This means that both Hagar's son and Keturah's sons received material goods from the patriarch. The 12 tribes of Ishmael. Ishmael had 12 sons who became tribal princes and patriarchs of the so-called 12 tribes of Ishmael. The record of these names is in Genesis chapter 25, verses 13 to 15. These are the names of Ishmael's sons. 638. Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael. Then Kedar, Adameel, Mibizau, Misma, Dumah, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphis, and Kedamar. Genesis chapter 25, verses 13 to 15. These names are important because they gave rise to the semi-nomadic tribes, which spread through various regions of the Middle East, especially east and south of Canaan. Some scholars associate several of these tribes with known historical regions. Kedar is frequently mentioned in Assyrian and biblical texts as a powerful tribe. Isaiah 42:11, Jeremiah 49:28. Nebaioth is associated with the region of northern Arabia, and there are possible ancestors of the Nabateans, known for building in Petra. Tema. Tema is linked to a famous trade route and region in northern Arabia. Duma, Mibizau, Massa, and other names appear in Arabic and Hebrew records as distinct peoples. These tribes formed a group of Arab peoples, many of whom came into contact, alliance, or conflict with the descendants of Isaac. Some of these tribes became merchants before. Genesis chapter 37, verse 25. Warriors and even the adversary of the Hebrews in certain periods of history. The Bible declares that Ishmael lived 137 years and died in peace. And these are the years of Ishmael's life, 137 years, and expired and died and was reunited with his people. Genesis chapter 25, verse 17. Just as the children of Jacob formed the 12 tribes of Israel, the children of Ishmael also gave rise to a significant tribal alliance, which remains a key element of the identity of many Eastern peoples to this day. After the formation of the 12 tribes, the Ishmaelites began to act in various biblical narratives as merchants, as opponents of Israel. They are mentioned for the first time in Genesis 37, and raising their eyes they saw a company of Ishmaelites who came from Gilead, with their hair carried. Genesis chapter 37, verse 25. It was these Ishmaelite merchants who bought Joseph from his brothers and sold him as a slave in Egypt. This commercial activity is a typical mark of the descendants of Ishmael, nomads and businessmen in the desert. Throughout the Old Testament, the Ishmaelites appear associated with other tribes, often in opposition to Israel. The children of Ishmael with Kedar, and the Zagarians, Jabal, Ammon, and Amalek. Psalms 83, verses 6 and 7. The biblical texts highlight that even their camels carried precious necklaces. Judges, chapter 8, verses 24 to 26. A tribe of the Ishmaelites is also mentioned in Isaiah 21:17. It seems that the warriors of Kedar preserved the tradition of Ishmael's ability with bow and arrow. In the times of David, the father of a commander of the army of Absalom is designated as being an Ishmaelite, according to Samuel 17:25, 1 Chronicles 2:17. These warrior alliances show the spiritual and political distancing of the tribes of Ishmael in relation to the people of the promise. Even so, it is important to note that not all contacts were hostile. There were periods of commerce, coexistence, and even family interactions, like the marriage of Esau with a daughter of Ishmael. Genesis chapter 28, verse 9. The Bible paints a complex but coherent picture. The Ishmaelites were a people blessed by God with legitimate promises, but who followed a parallel lineage, often in conflict with the spiritual direction of the messianic promise. Ishmael and the modern Arab peoples. The historical tradition, both biblical and Islamic, states that the Ishmaelites are the ancestors of the Arab peoples. Although not all Arabs descend directly from Ishmael, many ancient Arab tribes identify with their lineage. According to historical and cultural records, the Prophet Muhammad, founder of Islam, claimed the descendancy of Ishmael through Kedar, one of his sons. This gives the Ishmaelites a central role in the formation of the Islamic Arab world, while the spiritual lineage of the promise continued with Isaac and Jacob. The ethnic and cultural lineage of Ishmael grew and spread widely, occupying vast regions of the Middle East and North Africa. It is interesting to note that the promise of God to Ishmael was fulfilled literally. He became the father of a large and numerous nation, as God had promised. Genesis chapter 17, verse 20. The descendants of Ishmael influence politics, religion, and world culture to this day. Conclusion. The history of the Ishmaelites is a powerful reminder that God is faithful to all his promises, even when human paths take detours. The lineage of Ishmael remains to this day as a living testimony of what God spoke. The tribes of Ishmael grew and spread, fulfilling the divine word, even though the messianic promise was followed by Isaac. God's plan has always contemplated salvation for all peoples, and one day, all the families of Abraham, Jews, Arabs, and Gentiles, will bend before Jesus, the Prince of Peace. After that, I looked, and behold, before me there was a great crowd that no one could count, of all nations, tribes, peoples, and languages, standing before the throne and the Lamb with white vests and palm leaves in their hands. They cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, who is seated on the throne, and to the Lamb." Apocalypse chapter 7, verses 9 to 10.